Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Karis Project podcast. Um, we are here today with the next episode of the Matrix Reloaded, to talk about some of the issues with the feminism, what's going on today, with everything that's going on, and so forth. So we're gonna start getting some things together and so forth. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, my daughter was looking up some stuff about the start of the women's rights movement and so forth, and came up with some interesting stuff. So, why don't you start us off by talking about what you found?
Hey y'all, what's good? In the proverbial hood. Kaysha here. Guineas muck up and it's late, but the show must go on, you feel? Okay, yeah, I was looking at some stuff because I saw a lot of discourse about engagement rings, and it kind of started from there, and I started like thinking back about the origin of that, how it even started, and then I went to apparel and like dress, like how Christians dress, because then people started getting these arguments like, oh, I, you know, the arguments went from, okay, well, engagement ring this, blah blah blah, size this, money this, and it was like, oh well, you're fat this, or you're immodest this. So I was like, let me see what the Bible says about this. Yeah, there's actually no biblical justification for engagement rings whatsoever. It's not anywhere. God did not marry Adam and Eve with it. It was actually something that was brought on by De Beers, and a slogan that was made, you know, diamonds aren't gold, with a friend, and diamonds are forever, and Marilyn Monroe's kind of uh, film career kind of cemented that as well, and made it more part of the Christian church because it became very widespread, despite the fact that everyone was poor throughout the Depression. Uh, they kind of used this to spark money back in the diamond kind of field. And De Beers kind of runs the diamond mill like a cartel. It's not even like diamonds truly are that rare, but in the 1800s, it was predominantly rich people, right? And then that was just getting diamonds. It had nothing to do with like rings so much. People sometimes use a gold band, but it wasn't really involved with the church at all. And so they kind of brought that in, and of course, it used to be a pagan practice. It still is. I mean, every piece of jewelry that you wear and in its respective place is attributed to a ritual to a specific god. And God told us not to wear any kind of jewelry and don't adorn ourselves with jewelry, and also not to put markings on our skin, tattoos and stuff like that, because of the representation. Obviously our body is a temple. Nevertheless, then it moves on to like apparel and stuff, and I was looking at it and came across um, Amelia Bloomer, and I remembered actually, and I knew these things before, but they had all skipped my mind until I seen all this discourse online, and like I said, I come across Amelia Bloomer again in my mind. I said, okay, this lady's actually one of the most prominent voices in the women's suffrage movement, first wave feminism, actually behind Elizabeth Cady Stanton. I'm sorry if I'm saying the name incorrectly. And she actually introduced her to Susan B. Anthony. She's accredited for introducing. Those three had a friendship that then lasted about 50 years. Those three women helped destroy society. They actually, when it comes to apparel, they hated God. They hated the authority of men. And this was like the mid 1800s, the early 1900s. And they stopped women from wearing dresses that covered up to your wrist and down to your ankles and, your neck. And they started slowly inching the skirt up to below the knee, which everyone thought was extremely scandalous. And they started putting men's pants underneath. That was primarily Amelia. She was more doing the dress reform predominantly, whereas um, Elizabeth Cady Stanton was doing more, co-parenting, divorce, and, family and all these other stuff. So they all had their different roles, right? And so they said they had to move away from those things and they wanted to make more gender fluidity. Actually, they laid the groundwork and the foundation for the trans ideology because they thought that uh, men and God didn't have authority over them, and actually that they should be above them and all these other things, and that they should be able to dress in an equivalent manner. And God, I actually was looking through the Bible, and God, and I know this, of course, through previous study, and most Christians would, that when men wear the same apparel as women, it is an abomination unto the Lord. And not only that, if you look at every single time modesty is addressed in the Bible, this it is specific to garments that cover your wrists and your ankles, and they also your neck. And the reason for this was not just for modesty and principle, but it also was for protection for your health, because there's a lot of respiratory illnesses that can be caused, diseases and infections um, for exposing your extremities. And this was not normal. There's plenty of verses in the throughout the Bible that actually demonstrate the importance of covering your extremities and the clothing. And one of the words, keneth, or something, a Hebrew word for the garment that God clothed Adam and Eve with in the Garden of Eden, is actually a word. I think it's something that means tunic or something. Regardless, the word actually translates to a garment of clothing that fully covers to your wrists and your ankles and your neck. And Jesus, his garments are described the same way. So, um, I find this conversation interesting with modesty. And of course, I find it interesting. And I laughed a little bit. I chuckled because I came up like to recollect these facts late last night because I was talking with my grandmother and she had brought something to my attention. And it's funny because I had just posted a very cute picture with a dress above the knee. And I realized that the people who instituted a lot of these things, not only were they pagan worshippers, New Age spiritualists, averse to God, actually hated God and the authority of men, they were doing things to completely destroy women and family and God and society. Like they were putting women in the position to completely destroy them. The reason I thought about this is because I'm like, why would I participate in something when the person who ideology who started it was actually a very wicked individual? And so a lot of people are like, oh, well, we've moved away from that. We don't have to do that anymore. Well, okay, if a pedophile told you to start doing certain things, then why would you do it? A lot of people say, oh, well, new age feminism is different. First wave feminism is better. First wave feminism was open about gender fluidity. First wave feminism didn't want fathers in the home. First wave feminism believed in divorce. First wave feminism wanted women to dress like men. They didn't want women to have any authority. They wanted to be free and liberated. First wave feminism is more in line with the filth that we see today, then some of the feminists today are even in line with feminism, if that makes sense to you in any capacity. So I think a lot of people need to remember the origins of where things started. And what's funny about these things is that the Library of Congress in the United States of America has all of this well documented. A lot of people are like, oh, where did you find these unusual truths? The government website, mind you. That's not where I initially found it. My father and I did studies about this years ago when I was thinking about apparel and how I should dress myself and adorn myself. I was thinking about getting earrings. At one point, I decided, not to. But I was like, oh, you don't need that and what have you. So we did all of these studies and went through all these histories. But there are many government websites that keep records of this because why? This is a part of history that actually formed the way society is today. You cannot be a Christian if you do not follow the principles of God. And people are like, oh, coping. Oh, well, you can't say the absence is prohibition. My father, sitting here next to me, says that God is a man and God speaks in actions the way that men do. If God in perfection created Adam and Eve a certain way and he married them and created them in his likeness, and then he finished creation and he said it was good. He married them, told them be fruitful and multiply. Not once did he provide them a wedding ring. They were just one man, one woman. What does that tell you about God? That is a direct representation of who God is and what he is. And that is being destroyed. So you can cope all you want and say whatever you want, and you can do whatever you want. That's fine. People seem to think that when I put out information about certain things, that I'm demanding that they do something. No, I'm not demanding anything because I can care less. I'm simply providing information and giving you the opportunity to choose because that's what Jesus tells us to do. It's not my job to go out here and police what other people do in their house. I don't give three kicks, if I'm being honest. The fact of the matter is, are you going to make an educated choice about the decisions that you're making and the benefits, like the pros and cons, the consequences, both be it positive or negative, about the choices that you're deciding to make in life? That's really what we're at. And that's why I don't understand what people are so confused about. You can, in fact, do whatever you want. You absolutely need to accept the consequences of what actions you're going to take. And you might not even need to accept the consequences. That still doesn't absolve you of the reality of what's going on because you cannot call yourself a Christian and walk around and not follow the principles of God. And you can say to yourself, oh, well, this doesn't mean this or whatever, whatever. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, do I want to be a Christian because it fits my lifestyle and who I am already? Or do I want to serve God and do I want to call myself a Christian? Do I want to be a Christian because I want God to reform me and change me in my heart? I remember that thing last night. This is the last thing I'll say because it's long. I'm long. I remember that thing last night and I said to myself, you know what? I'm not doing enough. I can do better. It's not, and God only judges you according to what you know. But I knew this before, but I forgot about this. And, whatever. I can take consequence, whatever. But in that moment, I said to myself, you know what? I can do better. I'm going to do better. Now I know I'm going to start being intentional about it to the best of my abilities because I want God to make a difference in my life. No matter how many mistakes I make every single day, I always come back to the same thing. I want Jesus in my life. I don't care about anything else. I want to be saved. Above all other things in this world, above all the things that this world has to offer, and truly it's not much, I want to be saved. And I think this is the question people are forgetting to ask themselves. Do you want to be saved or not? And what are you willing to do? I'm not telling you that if you don't do what I'm going to do, that you're going to be lost. That's not what I'm saying. I'm simply saying that you have to look at yourself, look at what you're doing, and see if you're willing to change. And what are you doing to find the information necessary to make sure that you get there? And are you listening to the voice of the Holy Spirit? If you do, you'll be okay.
No, I mean, and some of the stuff that we're looking at, we have to look into context of everything else that's going on. Because a lot of people have it, seem to think that a lot of things don't apply, or they're like, oh, well, that doesn't matter because it's separate. But that's not really the way a lot of these things work. A lot of these things work because they're tying a bunch of things together. And the idea of what happened with feminism, it was absolutely necessary for that groundwork to be laid in order to get where we're getting here. Because it was Congress who passed the resolution for women to get the right to vote. They didn't vote for it. They didn't have it. They had to get somebody to give it to them in the Congress, right? And with that, it came some responsibility, and there's also other things that need to be dealt with, like how people enforce those rights or play the game of politics, because there's always that threat of if you don't do it, this will happen. And it's different when you have like 100 men facing down 100 other men rather than having 100 women trying to face down 100 men. It's going to be very difficult.
But But my thing is as well, you have someone who literally serves the devil coming in and bringing a certain set of ideologies and things for you to go and follow. They are directly speaking against the Bible. Many churches at the time were speaking about these three key women. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, she was the #1 leader for feminism in the United States of the West. Amelia Bloomer, and the other one, Susan B. Anthony. Many churches of multitude of different denominations were speaking out against this woman. All of them, all of these women, about how wicked the teachings were and how dangerous they were, not only to the woman, her appearance, but to her mind, her body, her character, her safety, her health. The things that these women were doing was solely to feel good at the expense of your safety, your health, all other things. Medical professionals spoke against what these people did because, like I said, there was a lot of health precautions in place for having your extremities covered. And today, that has not gone away. The reason your face can be exposed is because there's a lot more in your face that actually gives you the provision to have the adequate circulation with exposure to certain air. Whereas your extremities, like your wrists, your stomach, your back, your legs, and your ankles, do not have that same thing. So all of the body has not changed. The body is the same. All of these women, all of the things that they were putting in place directly went against the Bible for the family, for marriage, for the home, for education. They agreed with trans ideology. They were pushing the foundations of trans ideology. Why does anybody not go back and look at these things and tell themselves, why in the hell am I going to listen to what these people are saying? Where is what they're saying in line with the Bible?
Please tell me.
Please tell me where.
I'm actually going to pull up a quote, and it's a little kind of off topic. It's kind of going on what was going on with JD Vance talking about what is going to be done for the people that did wrong. But you want to listen to what he said, what he says when he is when he is when he's talking here. What? Is that really doing that? Oh, of course I put the same thing in twice. That's why it's not changing. I guess I'll have to get it back up before I actually do that because I did it wrong the first time. Let me just go and correct that and get the right thing in there because this is actually kind of important because of what was being done. Okay, so JD Vance is talking. He's talking on the news here, and I'll bring this clip up. But listen to what he says, how he describes why certain things are happening. All right, I'll just pull it up here.
Fox News can confirm that Attorney General Pam Bondi today signed an order directing an unnamed U.S. federal prosecutor to take evidence to a grand jury relating to an alleged conspiracy to tie then 2016 candidate Donald Trump to the country of Russia. Now, Fox News reviewed the one-page order just hours ago signed by the Attorney General. A source familiar with the probe confirms this as well, while a DOJ spokesperson declined to comment on this report of an investigation. Fox is told Attorney General Bondi is taking the referrals from Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, quote, very seriously. The spokesperson says that Bondi believes there is, quote, clear cause for deep concern, end quote, and a need for the next steps. Now, this move, Will, comes just a couple of weeks after the Director of National Intelligence, you see her right there, Tulsi Gabbard, sent a criminal referral to the Justice Department regarding what she says proves there was a conspiracy to undermine Trump's candidacy and later his first term in office. Now, to be clear today, There are no charges that have been filed, no indictments. This is incredibly early in the process. What we have here is taking evidence the Justice Department believes it has to a grand jury to secure an eventual indictment or indictments. We don't know exactly where the grand jury will meet. We don't know who will go before the grand jury, and that's by design, because grand juries determine if there's enough evidence to indict, and grand juries are secretive in the American legal system, so it's normal not to know all of the answers. Again, the DOJ declining on any comment regarding this investigation. But, Will, big news, this was signed by the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, today to take this evidence of an alleged conspiracy to a grand jury with the...
Okay, so that part, yeah, most people know. Now that'll give a little bit of context, and now I'm going to put up the quote where J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, is now talking about what's going on. So now you're going to have J.D. Vance. He's going to come in and he's going to say a little blurb about what's going on, and pay attention to what he's outlining here.
Do you want to see indictments?
I absolutely want to see indictments, Maria. Look, of course, you've got to have the law follow the facts here. You don't just indict people to indict people. You indict people because they broke the law. But if you look at what Tulsi and Kash Patel have revealed in the last couple of weeks, I don't know how anybody can look at that and say that there wasn't aggressive violations of the law. What they basically did is they defrauded the American people in order to take Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign talking points and turn them into intelligence by defrauding the American people, defrauding the intelligence agencies, lying about what the intel said. They would take something that supported a Hillary Clinton campaign talking point, and they would overemphasize it and exaggerate it. They took anything that actually contradicted that narrative and they buried it deep, and through that, they actually laundered Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign talking points through the American intelligence services. That's a violation of the people's trust. That's a violation of what our intelligence services should be doing, and I absolutely think they broke the law. You're going to see a lot of people get indicted for that. Here's the thing that should really bother the American people. What do you want our intelligence community to be doing? I want them to be catching bad guys. I want them to be making sure that terrorists aren't going to kill innocent American civilians. I don't want them laundering Hillary Clinton's campaign talking points into the American media and giving them this air of legitimacy. It is sick. And it's disgusting. It hurt the intelligence community, it hurt the American people, and it hurt the first Trump administration. We've got to have consequences for it, or we're just going to see the same play repeated again and again.
So what he's laying out there is, yes, they used it in the Hillary campaign for the Russia hoax, but that type of tactic, where you pull out something that seems to support what you're saying and then bury the rest that contradicts what you said, is what is happening like crazy everywhere. Because when you have deception, that's all you can do.
That's funny because Amelia, I was going to say this earlier, but it slipped my mind. Amelia Bloomberg, she was on the very first, she was an editor and a writer or something on the very first female run news publication in the US called The Lily. And they started off as a conservative kind of news thing for, advices for women, just random things, right? And then slowly started to introduce all of these feminist ideals until they gradually, so they built up a little bit of a rapport from basic things that was not on the rocks that most people could accept and appreciate, and then slowly started introducing more things. These are same tactics over and over again, no matter where you go. And it's funny that they done that like that with the media, because they did it when it was just newspaper, and now they're doing it again with TV. This is hilarious.
Just even before we go in and take a short commercial break, but this is how people present their evidence against us. They'll take the stuff that we have, they'll take it to make it sound like it supports what they say, and they bury the rest. They tell everybody, oh, don't read those documents. They're just nonsense and everything else like that. But just pick and choose a little bit of something, and then fabricate the rest to go ahead and make that story. This is what people the guys, they did this at Select Committee at January 6th did this. They did this to a lot of people. This is how they pushed their propaganda machine. And this was just what they talked about with what was going on with Trump and what they were doing there. They were using the intelligence communities to do it. But this is happening, this is a standard operating procedure for a lot of these criminals inside of the government. And what people need to wake up to the fact is that there are a lot of corrupt people in positions of power. A lot. People don't want to realize that, but there is a lot of corrupt people, and you have to understand that that's just the way it is. People should distrust the government. But anyway, we're going to take a short commercial break, and we'll be right back. We hear from the Pillow.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
So yes, if anybody needs any of the MyPillow products, go to mypillow.com/Karis or call 800-845-2942. Use the promo code Karis, or you can use the links in the description if you're watching on Rumble, Facebook, or BitChute. And or you can support at the donor box or the Give Send Go that you see in the description at the bottom of the ticker. Support a good cause. Thank you. So at the end of the day, people really need to start looking at what they're doing and looking at how information is being presented and so forth. And so we've got to start using our minds, because these type of tactics are being done over and over again all across the board, right? Where they're not giving you the full truth. They're giving you something that supports, like you said, their talking points, but they're not giving you a full understanding. They're just giving you a little bit and saying, oh, no, trust us. And they just keep pushing it over and over again and repeating it so that people become comfortable with the lie. This happens over and over and over again. Like, for example, a lot of people are like, oh, well, they're just an illegal immigrant when it comes to my daughter and myself, and oh, they shouldn't come here and all that kind of stuff and this, and that. But nobody stops to consider why the hell we're at the border in the first place. Because if you can't consider why we went and what happened as a result of the information that we had, people would shut their damn traps. Because, like he said, you want people that should be there to help protect American citizens, not shut away evidence that would save lives, right? So all the people are like going, yes, they did their job. They did their jobs at the cost of lots of people being dead or injured had this not come forward. Had this come forward at the time where it did. And so we all, just like anything, like the feminist agenda, they didn't come out and tell you what their aims were. They didn't. Because if they did, everybody would have washed their hands from it at that time and they would have never bought it. But they moved everybody over a little bit over so many years. And don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting down and saying that women don't have rights or any of that kind of stuff. I'm talking about the effects of what is happening today, the destabilization, right? Because when you can't destroy men by fighting with them, because a lot of these men that are behind this, they're weak and predatory men. What happened when couldn't get killed by the Philistines because he took a jawbone of an ox and he killed a whole pile of them. What did they do? They sent a woman. Right? Fastest way to destroy man is using a woman. What?
So just some of the quotes from Elizabeth Cady Stanton. The Bible and the church have been the greatest stumbling blocks in the way of women's emancipation, and that's the Woman's Bible, 1895. Another quote: I know of no other book that so fully teaches the subjugation and degradation of women, referring to the Bible in the Woman's Bible. Women are, by the Bible and the church, taught that they must be subject to man. The Bible, in its plain teaching, shows that woman was made after man for man and is inferior to man. The church has no right to establish a theological hierarchy over women. I do not accept what I cannot interpret for myself. Some quotes by the other two women against the authority of the Bible. I do not believe in the self-sacrificing doctrine which makes woman the slave of man. I always distrust people who know so much. I always distrust people who know so much about what God wants them to do to their fellows, often quoted in response to religious morals. I think the Bible is a book that has been used for the oppression of women more than any other. The religious persecution of the ages has been done under what was claimed to be the command of God. I pray every single second of my life, not on my knees, but with my work, and implying that the tradition of religious piety was not in her path. That was Susan B. Anthony. Amelia Bloomer, yeah. When we endeavor to
I just wanted to make a comment. She made a completely emotional appeal with absolutely no justification or reason. She just said a bunch of words and said that this was the case, and she didn't bring any evidence to back it up. She just said it, right? Because it's not the Bible that does that. It's the people who make bad decisions. People lie and they deceive all the time. But fundamentally, in order for them to achieve their objective, they had to be anti-Christian. They had to go against Christianity because Christianity had well-defined roles of the father and mother based on the biology that God made us. And then if you take away God of the situation, then you just go by whatever people decide to go at the time, and that's always changing. That's not how you have a stable society.
right. So last couple. When we endeavor, this one's Amelia Bloomer now. Previous one was Susan B. Anthony. When we endeavor to reform the laws, we find the pulpit in our path. The same church. This is all the way back, like a couple hundred years ago. The same church which declares that woman was made for man and is subordinate to him declares also that she is to remain at home in the domestic circle and take no part in public affairs. The woman is taught from the pulpit and the press that it is her duty to be submissive and dependent, and that to desire anything beyond the home sphere is unwomanly and sinful. And she was opposed to these beliefs. She's speaking in opposition to these beliefs. This was in the 1800s and late 1800s and the 1900s, early 1900s. What's crazy is that people will look at women today and say, okay, well, they're dressed immodestly. Like, you can't paint everyone with the same brush. You have to look at the circumstances of the individual, because you can't look at one thing and be like, someone is all bad just because they made one mistake. They might be, 90% on the right path and 10% still need work, or even 80% and still need 20%, or even 60% and still need 40%. They're still mostly good than they are bad, or doing more proper, pathways than they are negative, I guess you can say. But people, when they look at women today, you see those women going around like sororities or whatever the hell, dancing like half naked and all these other things. when you look at the actions of women, a lot of people are like, okay, well, they're attractive and America is so back and blah, blah, blah. When you look at the behavior and the character of what these women are doing, if you knew the Bible and you knew the origin of what you were practicing, you would see that it goes against the very principles of God and what he teaches in the Bible. And you would understand that the women who practice certain characteristics and tendencies outwardly in society are not actually supporting God. They're not supporting any of his principles. They're actually supporting the devil himself. The women's suffrage movement is the devil on steroids. And there is nothing that anyone can do to convince me that it has any part. It has severed. People try to say, oh, well, the first wave. No, you can't say that. If that's the case, if you can corrupt what's God's truth, then that means the Bible is a lie. God sets things up in a way to fail, that at some point it's going to become corrupted. And we as people, we just have to refine it. No, God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. The Bible is very clear about that. But when something else comes in that is not of God, that can be corrupted. The women's suffrage movement is that.
I think what people should understand is what is actually going on. Because without a standard where there is an agreement on what a foundation the country should run on, then there is no foundation. And then it just goes wherever it wants or wherever people feel inclined to lead it. Because you need to have a common set of beliefs that don't change. If you don't have that, then it's going to be problematic because everybody does whatever they think is right. It's like trying to build a bridge, but everybody has their own unit of measure and you have to try to communicate with that. But they say, well, that's, my measure is over this, so that doesn't work, so forget about it. You're not going to get very far. You all have to kind of be on the same thing in order for things to work. And I'm not sitting down and saying that everybody has to believe everything identical, but there's certain things that people should understand that these should not be done. And what we're seeing is there's a backing away, an infringement of liberties like in an unprecedented manner. And how are we going to fix that, right?
The problem, sorry, but I'm sorry. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. Like, the problem, I think, in a lot of ways, is Christians just want to cope. They're weak. Because even when it came down to the other day, someone was talking about, oh, how are you going to say you don't believe in Valentine's Day like it's a religion? It is. If you look into the history of Valentine's Day, it comes from an ancient Roman practice called Lupercalia. And they used to sacrifice dogs and goats, and they used to go around striking women in the streets because they thought it would bring about fertility. The Library of Congress, again, in the United States of America, talks about the evolution and origin of Valentine's Day and gives tribute to it. And Christians will go around trying to justify absolutely anything to make them feel good these days. Everybody is so obsessed with adorning themselves with money, with assets, with clothes, with all these kind of things that make themselves feel good or look good or whatever. You can have the clout. You can have people, oh, look what they have. They have this, whatever, blah, 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 and you're going to sacrifice your morals. Why would you ever want to participate in something that has nothing to do with God? Like I said, I don't give a damn what anybody does in their house. But you're not going to sit down and convince me that in my house, that it is my obligation and my duty to follow the filth and the demonic, satanic, pagan practices that the lot of you are following under the pretense of, oh, well, the Christians adopted it. So when Christians just decide to adopt minor attracted persons, the way the rest of this damn country has been doing, and adopt also mutilating children, the way the rest of this country has been doing, and believe me, a lot of churches have been, does that mean all of a sudden that we have to accept this now? I don't think so. I don't think so. Like my dad said, not everybody has to do the same thing, and you should go with the dictates of your conscience and follow the Bible, but you're not going to convince me. I'm not following what anyone of you is saying. It doesn't make sense.
What I'm going to say is, and I had a discussion with somebody over this, and people don't talk about this in the arguments or any of the discourse when it talks about children. Nobody talks about the developmental harm that the children have. Because ideally, a child is supposed to have a mother and a father for them to get the best ability to get that child to adulthood in their best possible potential. Everything that we do can either help that developmental potential be realized or hinder it. When we do certain things to children, we are causing them damage, and some of them don't even have to be bad. If I went to take little Johnny and Jenny at 7 years old, and I started to teach them calculus at that point in time, and then question them why can't they pass the calculus when their brains aren't developed for them, I'm going to give them a complex and they're going to suffer psychological harm. Now, is calculus wrong? No, but introducing it to them at 6 or 7 years old, of course that's wrong because they can't get it, right? And it doesn't matter how much I try to do something about it. Most children never going to get that until they get to an age appropriate, their brains develop. So when you keep that in mind, we have to understand the things that we put in front of children, even the things that are not bad. If you have to choose between two decisions that are both good, you're going to give up one thing to get the other. That's just the way it is. And so when you have things that are causing harm, there's where you have to sit down and stop this.
Yeah, and another thing people have to take into consideration, the Bible says, he who is faithful in little is faithful also in much, and he who is evil in little is also evil in much. And when you think of the course of the last couple of years in the pandemic, last few years, I should say, the people who had a certain type of thinking and a certain mindset, in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, there were churches that were speaking against the character and the weakness of people. They said people who chose to value their jobs, their money, their friends and connections and resources and all sorts of things and comfort, as opposed to accepting the harassment, persecution, losing job, money, resources, jail time, and even death, because they understood what was happening to Christians at the time and the persecution that was going on and the things and the morals and principles you had to sacrifice in order to receive comfort on a societal level at that time, and the pressures of what was being done. And when you look over the course of the last 5 years, and this was over 100 years ago, this was late 1800s and the early 1900s that they were talking about, this is the same thing that we're experiencing today. If you look at what happened just the last 5 years, the amount of Christians and conservatives and right-wing people and good people in society that want to come and say that they're doing this and they're doing that, but they were all giving up everything, all of their freedom, all of their principles, all of their morals, all of their sanity and their own critical thinking, so that they can go and jab themselves, so that they can go snitch on their neighbors for refusing to jab themselves, trying to put their neighbors, their friends and family in jail for trying to do the right thing to help people. The people who were going around hunting people, whistleblowers, all levels of evil, people setting up people, destroying families and children. You can't make this stuff up. The fact that this is being repeated in the express exact same way, like I said, the Bible says, God says he is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and that is proven to be true. All of these fake things that come along that people try to latch onto to declare, oh, I need this. This is why I'll never say I'm a conservative or I'm a liberal. I am a Christian, because a Christian stands regardless. All of these other stupid ideologies that people come up with so that they can clout chase online and try to jump with the next best thing, and they can't even damn well keep up with it because they can't replicate the damn ideas, because they don't make sense, because they don't last. It's only for the now. It's I'm here for a good time, not a long time. This is what people are living with. The fact that people are dealing with the exact same problem over 100 years ago, that shows that it doesn't matter what you're saying. The proof is in the pudding. You are demonstrating that you have no Christianity, because you say you have belief, but there's no actions in that belief. And when push comes to shove and you just get scared and you get a little bit of pressure, you squeal, You squeal and you run and hide like a coward because you want comfort above everything, and you would never, ever truly serve God if it really came down to it. It's not you serve God when everything is roses and good. Remember what the devil said to God when he saw Job. Oh, you have no one. God said, have you considered my servant Job? He said, it's only because you've given him wealth and all family, all these other things that you've blessed him why he serves you. God turned to him and said, take everything but his life. And he took every single thing but his life, his home, his resources, his assets, all his farm gone, even his servants, every child gone, only the one servant to go tell the tale. And the only thing he spared about was his wife. And they were on the street rubbing ash on their skin, the boils. And they were together on the street. And even his wife turned to him and said, curse God and you die. And he said, you speak like the foolish women. And then she had to stop. And God eventually blessed them back with everything. But most of you, actually double what they lost. Most of you, if you were put in the position like Job, the way that many Christians were the last 5 years who were destroyed, many regular people, there are many regular people who don't even go to church, who serve God unwittingly, even more than most people in the church. And that is a shame. But that's what we're dealing with because it is the contents of your character, and who you are is coming through in the small ways and the big ways. And if you guys were paying attention, you would notice, and you wouldn't be confused online like who's doing what, because you'd be looking at the principle.
I'm talking to myself. The
Wow,
mic wasn't.
I heard it because I'm sitting here and I didn't even catch it.
Yeah, so yeah, so just disregard that because I was like, oh, my whole mic is turned off as I'm going on this rant. So basically, what you want to do is basically you want to make sure that you're doing what is right. You got to stand up, and you can't sit down and allow people to go after other people and do nothing about it, because the stuff that JD Vance laid out, that's not just happening to Trump, it's happening to tons of people, a lot of people. And this is what happens when tyranny occurs. You cannot just sit down and say, oh, I'm going to just comply my way out of it. The guys who were getting kicked in the face because you were too cowardly to do it, those are the people that you should be helping. Because it's not the man who has everything to lose you have to worry about. The man who has lost everything and has nothing, but still refuses to bend to the tyranny. Those are the ones that the tyrants fear the most, because they know that there's nothing that's going to stop them other than death. And this is where we need to get to that point as a society, that this is where we want to sit down and say that it's not worth living a life in a world where there's no liberty and they can go and do this kind of filth to children. There needs to be accountability. And the accountability is especially going to come from men, because as I come up and close here, men bring the force required. They are the backup to enforce something if things go sideways. This is why traditionally women didn't go into politics, because it has a certain or else factor. If this doesn't play out nicely by doing the politics, like in America, they go and do 1776 all over. That's what the Second Amendment is to stand as a deterrent, so that when they go to access their things, it's like, well, you want to go and do that stuff, you're going to find out. So don't provoke us. Just do your job. Right? And it's just the way it is. And we have to work together, because men and women are way better working together than apart. When they're separated, it makes it easier for the predatory people to go after them. Anyway, I'm going to close here with a prayer, and then I will give you your final thoughts. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. We thank you for the hope that you have given us this day. Open our hearts and minds to your will, and Lord, I ask of you this day, get the men and the women to come together to rebuild our family, our churches, and our nation, that we could have some protection from the children, is my prayer. In Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Alright, thanks, Dr. For as always. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. It was a later show today. Had some technical difficulties. But yeah, guys, honestly, like I said, do whatever you want. I mean, you have the choice. I should say it this way. I'm not going to advise you to do whatever you want, because I don't want to be responsible for that. You have the free will to do whatever you want. I'm just saying, for me, I'm not going to take the risk. Whatever I learn, I'm going to try to use it to the best of my abilities to become better. Me personally, I've never cared for jewelry. I've never cared for rings. I don't need rings. I don't care. Like, the value comes from an individual that you're with. And it's the contents of your character that matters the most. And this is what people need to come back to. Who you are, and not what you are. Like, not what you have, rather. We need to come back to some sense of sincerity and family. Like, it just, anything else doesn't make sense. So anyways, thanks guys for your time and considerations. We'll check you in the next one. Have a good night, and to my dearest Karis, until we meet again, my friend, and we will ciao.